In 2014, a crack toy fixer was banished from the forums for talking about repairing vintage toys. Undeterred, this man promptly set up his own YouTube channel located in the Somerset Underground. Today, still wanted by hardcore Star Wars collectors, he survives as a maverick toy restorer. If you have a problem, if no one else can help, and if you can find him, maybe Toy Polloi can help you. Welcome to Toy Polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from Toy Polloi, and in today's video we're going to be repairing this vintage Action Man Searchlight. Now, I was recently given this by Nick from Action Pop Dad, and he thought it would be an ideal project for the channel because it doesn't work, and he said that maybe what could be done was to update it and add an LED light in it to get it working, or basically just sort of try and modernize it a bit. And it's not something I've ever worked on, so today's going to be the first time I'm actually going to take a look at it and take it apart. It may be we can get this working as is, or it may be, as Nick says, that we could update it with an LED. So let's take a closer look at the Searchlight, see what's broken on it, and then see what we need to fix. So this is the Action Man Searchlight. It's essentially a glorified torch that you can sort of rotate around, and you can move this up and down. On the back of it there is also a little button here that you can press, so you can do Morse code, I guess is the idea with that you push it in and it switches a switch inside. It's a fairly simple thing, but as I said, this one doesn't work. The reason it doesn't work is because on the bottom it's missing some bits. There's a contact missing. It also uses a rather old battery that is no longer made, one that was made by Everready. I think it was even called a torch battery, so this shows you how much like a torch this thing is. So that battery we can't get anymore, so no matter what we do we're going to have to replace it with something else. So that's going to be one of the things that we need to do on this. But Nick says yeah, it doesn't work at all, so I think the first thing to do with it is to take it apart and give it a good clean. It actually comes with a little fabric cover to go over the front of the Searchlight. It's quite a nice toy really. It makes it look very military. The idea with this toy is that you can either have it as a standalone thing like this, or it would actually fit on the back of the Action Man Jeep, and you could sort of have it riding around, so someone driving the Jeep and someone standing on the back using this Searchlight. It's just quite a nice thing. Simple but nice. So what are we going to do with this? Well, I think the first thing to do is actually to take it apart, and then we can see exactly what's wrong with it. We can see if the bulb is blown, and yeah, just sort of generally do a little bit of research before I start doing any work on it. It doesn't look too complicated to take apart. In fact, I can see that we can remove this top section here. If I rotate this round, there's a little ratchet thing there, or a little locking mechanism, so I can undo that and we can take that part off straight away. So this is the bottom section. As I say, this is missing pieces. It looks like it should have a battery cover, but in actual fact it doesn't have a battery cover. All that happened is you would push the rather large torch battery in here and then clip it in place with these pieces here. So I think whatever I do, because we don't have that type of battery, I'm going to replace this and maybe make my own battery cover. It looks like I could make a battery cover that will fit in there if I put a little bracket on there and then be held in place with that. So I think that will be something to do. As you can see, that's the one clip, the one sort of battery connector that we have, so I'll remove that. That needs a good clean. Then we come up to the main part of the torch. So there's the cables that go into the battery sort of portion at the bottom. Those go up the middle of this, which is screwed together, so we can undo that, and then into the back of here, and then inside here is the light bulb. So I reckon if we twist this, yeah, that is going to come off. Oh, there we go. We can see what's inside. So you've got a light bulb in a little holder. Can we remove that? We can remove that. Oh, that's slightly broken, I see there. We need to repair those. You can see parts of it have come away, so we need to repair that. Then we have this light bulb which touches onto a little contact there at the back, so I'm guessing when you push this button it joins those two pieces of metal. If you can just about see those in there, it does. So it's a very simple mechanism indeed. I reckon this will be fixable, and I don't think we'll even need to update it. All we need to do is work out what the original battery was, and then we can make something, a modern equivalent to that. So I'm going to take this apart a little bit more, so I'll undo these two screws, then we can give everything a good wash and tidy up before we start reconstructing it. Actually, the first thing I'm going to do is repair this. This is the sort of reflector, so the bulb goes inside this and is reflected on the inside, but I can see that this little section here is snapped, like they're just about holding on, so I'm going to glue those back in place. This sort of plastic, this old plastic, works incredibly well with plastic weld, so I'm just going to drop a little bit of plastic weld onto those two pieces to secure them back in place so that I don't lose them. And I'm going to do that even before I wash this, because I have a sort of horrid feeling that those pieces will get lost. So a little bit of plastic weld onto those should hold them in place, and yeah, I shouldn't lose them then. And I think that has worked. It just needed a little bit just to repair that damage there. You can tell what sort of plastics work with plastic weld sort of just by touch. This is a harder plastic, a bit more like a styrene. So yeah, I think that's worked quite nicely. That is now nice and secure, and I'm not going to lose it. So I can now get on with taking the rest of this part and then cleaning it. Everything's now had a good wash and it's looking a whole lot better. It's still got a little bit of sort of age to it, but I'm liking how that's looking. So while I'm waiting for some bits to arrive that I've ordered in the post, I thought one thing I can get on with is actually making a battery cover to go in the bottom of this. As I say, it never used to have a battery cover. The battery that would have fitted in here was held in place by these clips, but my plan is to replace what was there with something modern, which is not going to be as big. So the way to hold that in is to make a battery cover, and it's going to be pretty straightforward to do. You can see there's a lip here where the original contacts would have been, so I can use that to hold the battery sort of cover up at one end. We'll need to put a little piece of styrene or something along that edge. So the first thing I need to do is actually cut a piece of styrene that's the same size as this hole. I'm using 2mm black styrene. You can see I've already marked it out and I've already scored it with a scalpel, so I've just got to break this piece out. I've also made a couple of little sort of longer pieces which I'm going to put at each end, because it actually looks like that's about 4mm down, so I need to raise it up slightly. So I'm going to make a piece that goes over here with some strips at either end to raise it up, and then these clips should hold it in place. So yeah, I'll just break this off and tidy it up and make something fairly simple. And there we go, it really is that simple. So there's a piece of 2mm styrene that I've cut to shape. I've just put an extra sort of lip of 2mm styrene along each end, and that's because this gap here is about 4mm. I could have just raised that up, but I didn't want to add too much to this base just in case I want to ever put it back to being original. So at the back here you can see I've added another strip of styrene, and that is 4mm from the bottom, and that means that now when I drop this in, it's got something to rest against, and it should sort of fit quite snugly. Let's just check that it does. So if I put that in the correct position, yeah, so that now fits quite snugly and is held at the same level as this sort of bottom part of the base. I can then rotate these clips that would have held the original battery in, and that will hold in the new base plate. So yeah, that's really good. That means I can now make my new battery sort of holder, and it will be held in place, and it's not going to sort of rattle around. You probably didn't need to do this. You could have velcroed stuff in or something like that, but sometimes it's nice just to try and finish something off and make it look tidy, even though you're never going to see this. I could paint this green. In fact, I'm not going to bother just because I've made it out of black styrene and it is all going to be hidden underneath. I think I will just leave it as black. It does a pretty good job as it is. And yeah, that is going to work nicely. So we can now get to putting the rest of this back together and getting the light working.
Polloi, Polloi.
So while I was building that battery cover, the part that I needed has arrived, which is this, which is a AA battery holder, and it holds 3 AA batteries. And the reason we need 3 is because, as I mentioned earlier, the original battery was a 4.5 volt battery. AA batteries are 1.5 volts, so 3 of them will give us 4.5 volts, and then we can test to see if this bulb works. I think it will do. I've had a quick look at it, and the filament inside looks in very good condition. So let's just give this a test. So I'll put in 3 of these 1.5 volt AA batteries into this holder. This one comes pre-wired. I bought it off eBay, and one of the options was, did you want it pre-wired? And I've said yes, because I didn't add any more to the cost of it. I think it was £1.99. So there you go. You can see we've got 3 1.5 volt batteries in there, which will give us 4 volts. So if I hold this onto here and touch this other one onto the other end, it should light the bulb. And there we go, it does. So this bulb actually works. So it's remarkable, after 40 odd years that the bulb still works. So we know that works, and we can now start putting this into the set. And then we'll solder this on to where the wires have broken. I have actually given this bulb a little bit of a clean. This is a contact cleaner. I've shown these many times before. I just quickly clean these contacts just to make sure there's no sort of corrosion on top of them, and just give it a little bit of a once over. I'll do the same on the other bits as I go, but it just helps make sure that everything actually is in proper contact. All the metal pieces are in contact. So let's put this back into the bulb holder, and then we'll put it all back in, and we can do a quick test with this before we have to solder everything on. But this is going to be the answer. 3 AA batteries gives me the 4.5 volts that I need to run the original bulb. To put the top section back together, we need the reflector and this rear section that has the switch on it. I've already put the metal piece back in here just because this plastic, as I say, was quite cracked, and I was very careful just sort of gently pushing that in. So we can now push the bulb back in this section like so. That goes in like that. Then there's this plastic piece which holds the bulb in place, make sure everything is in contact. So that goes like that. That's good. Then we have to reconnect the outside part of the bulb, which is on that little peg there. That has to go onto here. I might give that just a quick clean, as I say, with this contact cleaner. Just make sure there's no like corrosion on it. Like so, and I'll see if I can do the same just a bit in there. And we can plug that part back in. Like so. I'm also going to give the contact on the back of this. That's the sort of part that pushes onto the back of the bulb. So you can see the back of the bulb is there. This part pushes onto it. So I'll just give that a quick clean as well. I can see where the bulb is supposed to be sitting. So I'll just clean that up a little bit like that. That's good. And then we can push all of this back together. Yeah, like that. I'll push that back into place. So that now should push that bulb onto the sort of piece inside that I've just cleaned. That is the switch section. So we can actually give this a quick test. If I hold the new battery pack to these 2 wires, we should be able to get a connection. I'll make sure that this is switched on. This switch has a bit of a locking mechanism to it, so you can push it in, you can see it locks in place. So it should be, if I hold these together, let's just try this, that should light the bulb up. I hope it does anyway. If it doesn't, we've got something wrong. Yeah, that is working. You can't see it there. Let me just turn that round. So that is working. There you go. The bulb is lighting. It's quite a soft light, but it does work. I always imagined that this would be quite a soft light just because it's a sort of old-fashioned setup. But I think that's quite nice. As I say, you could sort of modernise this. It would be very easy to do. You could just use an LED. In fact, I have one here. This is a small 3mm LED, and I've got a 9-volt battery here because these obviously require a little bit more voltage to them. And if I hold this one on, you can see you could easily replace this with this sort of much brighter light, like that. And that would work quite nicely. It's a much sort of harsher light, so probably not in keeping with how this set looked, but it would be easy enough to do, just to have to make a little bracket in there to hold an LED rather than holding a bulb like that. So it would be something to do, but in this instance I like this old bulb, so we're going to go with that. Now we can attach the top section to this part. This should be fairly straightforward. Basically we've got to put those two pegs, the peg on either side, into these holes here, and then thread the wire down back inside past these screw holes and screw the piece together. It doesn't look like there's a particular front and back. When I took this off, it didn't particularly have a sort of a direction either way, so I'm just going to put them on you know, how I've got them now. So we have to slot that one onto that post there, and then we can slot that one onto that post there, like so. Now I get this wire and we can thread it carefully through, avoiding all of these screw holes, and down to the bottom like that. Put this section over. Oh, it's going to be quite hard to do actually. You don't want to catch that wire at all. Hold that in place, catch that over there like so, and then we had two screws which I've got in this pot here that we need to screw back in, and then we can start sorting out soldering on this battery pack. I think I'm going to have to thread this through. Yeah, I'm going to have to thread it all through, so we'll have to put the whole thing back together and then we'll solder the battery pack on last, but it's almost there. It's looking good. I'll pull that cable down a little bit more. You want this top part to be able to move sort of freely up and down, so I guess we need a fair amount of this cable out. That should do it. Yeah, that's not looking too bad. And now we can put this whole top section back on the base, so we just have to make sure the cables go through that hole in the middle. There is a little notch as well on this sort of top section, which you can just about see there, and that lines up with a little peg on the base, so I have to make sure that when I first put it on, that's lined up, and I can twist that round and it's all held in place. Then this piece won't come off and we can spin it around quite nicely, and then we're left with the two cables underneath. So I now need to get my soldering iron out, and we can attach these two new cables from the battery pack to those cables there, and yeah, everything should still work. At least that's what I hope. And there we go, that is the battery holder now soldered in. I've just tidied up the wires just to make it look a bit neater. I also had a go at spray painting the battery cover I made. I gave it a quick sort of undercoat with a plastic primer, and I remember that I had this sort of camouflage green, so I've given it a coat of that and then a clear top coat. It's not a perfect match, but it's not too bad, and it will sort of do the job. As I said before, you're not actually going to see this, it's hidden underneath, but I just thought I'd have a go as I knew that I had the paint sort of lying about in my garage. I've also stuck a couple of double-sided pads onto the bottom of this battery holder. These are just some sellotape double-sided sort of padded sticky pads, and I'm going to stick this onto the battery cover because I was thinking this was going to rattle around inside the toy, and I didn't really want it to do that because it would get quite annoying. So the easy option is actually just to stick this onto the battery sort of lid that I've made, and then when we put this into the bottom like that and fold it in place, everything should be sort of held quite nicely and is not going to rattle around. Yeah, you can see that the batteries are held in quite nicely. So that is the batteries all replaced, the battery compartment lid put on, everything's stuck in place. Let's give this a test. Okay, so now we can test this. So at the moment I've got the cover on, so we can take the cover off. There is the lamp underneath, and if I press this button we should be able to see the light up, and there we go, that is the Searchlight lighting up, and we can do sort of Morse code and things with it. I can also lock it on if I sort of press it in the right manner. There's one way of getting it locked. There you go. So it's now locked and on, and it's working really nicely. I'm really pleased with how simple it was to fix this. It's not the most complicated of toys, but then a lot of these Action Man toys aren't particularly complicated. It just takes a little bit of work to take them apart and then work out what's gone wrong with them. With this, it's just a 4.5 volt light bulb, so we had to replace the battery that you can no longer get with 4.5 volts of AA batteries. Now you can buy bulbs the same sort of size as this one, this original one. They still make them. All you've got to do is go onto somewhere like eBay or go to the RS website and do a search for 4.5 volt bulbs, and a whole sort of selection of them come up. So if you just want to replace the bulb on yours, then there are still these ones available. And as I said, you could modernize this by putting in an LED and replacing the battery with a 9 volt battery rather than the AA batteries that I put in the bottom, and that would do just as good a job. It would be a lot brighter, but I quite like the sort of subtlety of this light. It's so very in keeping with, you know, how it was made of the time. It wouldn't have been particularly bright, so I think this is quite a nice way of doing it, and it's been a really fun project. So a massive thanks to Nick from Action Pop Dad for giving this to me as a project to do. It's been really good fun. If you've enjoyed this video, then make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Toy Polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow Toy Polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.